All right. Let's go ahead and have a seat. If you are in Flag or Tucson or up northern Phoenix, I know there's Paradise Valley is watching online, a couple other schools. Casa Grande, I know you're watching as well. So we're glad to have you, those of you who are here. Thank you for joining us. By the way, I thought I didn't even do anything yet. You're giving me applause already. Hold it off. It might be really bad. You don't know. So, you know who we could applaud is all three of the speakers this morning. I think they did really good. So that was good. Let's quickly touch base. We talked about this a little bit here, and for those of you on camera, why are we really here? Someone give me some. Why are we here? Because you've been here now for most of the day. You've been hearing lots of people talk about different things, but why are we here? We talked about this morning. Some of you had some good answers. Tyrell had like textbook answer. It was a little scripted in my opinion, but you know. But yeah, Adrian. Do something about it. That's your like, okay, I can roll with that. That's cool. Someone had a good answer here. What was it? You had a good answer. To become better leaders, right? That's why we're doing Propel. But it's not just to become better leaders for the sake of you being a better leader. So why do we want to be better leaders? For God. You're right. You're right. For God. For proclaiming the gospel to others. Good. Thank you for doing your Skylar voice deep and like 2 octaves lower. I like it. If you don't know, Skylar has normal voice and then like deep, profound voice. So what I want you guys to realize is that part of what we're doing today is to try and help you be better leaders, but it's specifically to help you be better leaders because the kingdom of God needs you to be better leaders. All right? There are hundreds and thousands of college students that are walking away from any sort of faith, any sort of religion. Maybe they went into college without any, maybe they came in with some, but they leave without any. Most of your peers are looking at worldviews that are not biblical, not Christian, they're not salvific in nature. They are seriously sending them not only eternally to a place of loss and pain and hurt, but even on this planet. Even while we're still in existence, they're hurting. They're struggling. They're putting their hope and their joy in things that don't bring the hope and joy that Jesus Christ has. If you don't have that somewhere in you, I'm not saying you have to have the same fire that, you know, that maybe you see your missionaries have at times, hopefully. But if there's not some sort of ache in your heart for the fact that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of students, your peers, putting their hopes and their dreams in things that are going to let them down, things that don't have the joy and love of Jesus, and that they're going to end up eternally in hell. If something about that doesn't bug you, then I would say you need to seriously sit down with Jesus and have a bit of a heart-to-heart. Again, I'm not saying you got to wake up every morning and just be like, I'm an evangelist! You know, like, if that's what it is, then great, do it. That's awesome. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying there should be something in your heart that is longing for this fact that people are lost and going to hell. All right? And so what we're going to talk about is gospel appointments. And I know this is going to shock you for those of you who know me, but my plan is to talk for 20 minutes. I know. Now, yeah. Has my time started yet? Is that what you said? Yeah, I've already wasted like 3 minutes of it. I'm watching the clock. My plan is to actually only talk for maybe 20-ish minutes, and you notice it just grew a little. But we're actually going to do some role playing, but it's not just going to be your tables. What we're going to actually do is kind of fun. And for those of you on camera, I'm hoping it transfers on camera well. But basically, I've already hired and coached 3 people that are going to come up and act as a certain type of student. We're going to quickly kind of address who they are, what their background is. We're going to walk through what we've already kind of done in the gospel appointment schedule, if you will. And then I'm going to ask for volunteers to come up, 1 per role play, and actually give a gospel presentation, a gospel appointment to the person who is kind of decided what, the actor than the character that they are. Does that make sense? And I hope that transfers on camera. Now, one of the cool things is I'm going to stay here, so I'm actually going to potentially at times pause the conversation, kind of mediate, moderate, if you will, what's going on. And at some point, I may, for those of you who are locally here at Tempe, actually ask you, hey, what would you do when this was said? Or what would you do if they asked this question or made this statement? And so get some of your feedback too, and then we'll pick it back up. So each one of those, there's going to be 3 of them. Each one's going to go about maybe 15 minutes. And so I will use the full time, but it's going to be fun, not just me up here talking. You guys have been here. You've been very patient so far today with the first 3, and I wanted this one to be a little more interactive, a little bit more fun, as it is the last one of the day. But I would be amiss if I didn't at least walk you through what is a gospel appointment. Now, if you're, with some of the hands over here, this is your 3rd Propel or something like that, 4th Propel, and you've been doing this for a number of years, you're a senior, then some of this you've heard probably multiple times. You've been doing it, in fact. If you're a freshman, maybe you've done this, maybe you haven't, but I want to basically walk through why we choose gospel appointments. And so, you guys have already heard about the fact that we're all about leadership development. That's why you're here to begin with. It's all about student leaders. Now, let me say something on that. You may have the best missionary in Phoenix, or in Arizona, You may have the best missionary ever, but they can't do it without you. Now, let me rephrase that. You may have the most amazing missionary ever created in God's kingdom, but they can't do it without you. Not a single one of our missionaries can reach the thousands of college students like you guys can. Not any of our missionaries, no matter how gifted they are, can reach students the way you can. They cannot reach your peers the way you can. And so we absolutely double down, triple down, quadruple down, whatever, deca down, whatever that is, on this idea of student leadership, right? Okay, because you're the ones that are going to reach your peers, period, okay? 2, we talk about challenge communities. We talk about, some of the other distinctives that missions and some of this stuff, and that's huge. But gospel appointments is the primary way that we've actually decided to do intentional gospel sharing, okay? And you're the ones that need to do it. And so what does that mean? That means you need to be confident to do it. Now, how many of you, let's show of hands, you can raise hands and let your leaders look at that on camera, but who here is a little nervous to share the gospel? I am. All right, good. Most of the hands here in Tempe went up. I don't know how many on camera, probably a majority of them. Here's the honest thing. I do this for a living. I've been doing this for a number of years. When I go on campus, I still get a little nervous. And I don't get nervous like butterflies in my stomach anymore, but I get apprehensive. Like, mainly, I see someone, and I think maybe I should talk to them, and I'm like, no, they don't want to talk to me, right? And, oh, maybe I should talk to this person. No, they don't want. And so what we've tried to set up through gospel appointments is a really easy, casual way to meet with people with a gospel intention in order to have dialogue and conversation, to build relationships, and to get the gospel out there. Instead of feeling like you've got to have all the perfect things, you're trying to build a relationship and go through dialogue, okay? So let's do a couple of things first. How am I doing on time? 20 minutes. Sure, okay. So let's do the why, okay? Why do we need to share the gospel? God said so. Okay, why else? We care about people that have not been saved, okay? Why else? God's glory. Why else?
So they can believe the gospel.
See that voice, I told you, okay? It's dynamic. He's going to be a preacher. Already is. All right, what else? Because God chose to use us. Think about it. It talks about in Scripture that God can use, nature and His creation, and there's lots of things, but God's primary vessel of reaching people is through you. Not the person next to you, although them as well, not just me, not professional missionaries, not full-time pastors, although obviously them and us too, right? But God's vehicle for the gospel is you. Doesn't matter what your giftings are, whether you're an introvert, extrovert, talkative, not talkative, shy, good looking or normal. Trust me, normal people can do it. Uh, it doesn't matter. You are the vehicle. As a believer in Jesus, you are the vehicle that God has chosen to use to deliver the gospel. That's the need. That's the why. It's not a if you feel like it. It's not if you feel like an evangelist, okay? It's you are God's chosen method to share the gospel with the world, okay? You are saved, and one of the reasons you're saved is for his gospel, right? You track with me? Okay? We know the Great Commission, but if you don't, turn to Matthew 28, look at verses 19 and 20, and you'll see it specifically that God has called you to make disciples. He's called his body, his church, his followers to make disciples. It's not if you feel like it, it's go make disciples. Go teach people about Jesus. So one of the scriptures I want you to bring up, and actually we're going to look at, is 2 Timothy 4. So bring up 2 Timothy 4. We're just going to read like the first part of it, probably down through verse 5, okay? So look that up. I'm going to give you about 2 seconds to look that up. Okay, for the sake of time, I got to go. It says this. It says, I charge you in the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who is to judge the living and the dead, and by his appearing in his kingdom, preach the word. Be ready in season and out of season. Reprove, rebuke, and exhort with complete patience and teaching. For the time is coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but have itching ears that they will accumulate for themselves teachers to suit their own passions. Can I get an amen on that one? Think about it. For there is a time coming, as I'm going to repeat this verse, there is a time coming when people will not endure sound teaching, but will have itching ears, and they will accumulate for themselves teachers that suit their own passions. I don't know how soon this was supposed to, comes a day, but I tell you right now, it's definitely now. Okay? It's been that way for a while, but it's definitely now. And they will turn away from listening to the truth, wander off into myths, and as for you, always be sober-minded, enduring suffering, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill your ministry. Now, he's talking to Timothy, but I really think this is a charge to all young believers, all leaders in the church. So if you're going to be a leader at your church and in your challenge group, then your call is to be an evangelist. Maybe it's not vocationally, maybe it's not your full-time job, but you are an evangelist, okay? So then it was like, all right, so if every one of our students is called to be an evangelist, then we've got to give them and equip them some way to share the gospel that isn't just some, gifted street preacher method, right? Okay? And so Gospel Point is something that has come up it came out of a number of schools that also run Challenge. The one that's really been pushing it forward the most is a guy by the name of Paul Wooster, who's out in Chico State. Or has been. Now he works for NAM, actually, as well. And so he's been the one that's really progressed it. But so what is this tool of gospel appointment? What I want you to understand is that a gospel appointment is really, in all honesty, just an opportunity for you to sit down in a casual way and have a conversation that leads to Jesus. It's not, there are a ton of tools. And for the sake of time, I'm not even going to necessarily hound on the tools. You could do the cross illustration. You could do the ABCs of VBS. How many of you remember the ABCs of VBS, right? We could do that. We could do, 3 circles. We could do all of these things. And there's all these methods, and those are all very good tools. But that's what I want you to get today is not specific tools. You go figure out what tool you want to use, and that's fine. But what I want you to understand is that what we're asking you to do as student leaders is to be missionaries and to be evangelists on your campus and to share the gospel with people that you're able to connect with and sit down and have a casual conversation with. All right? So, what is it? It's just that. It's sitting down. There is one thing so again, all of the actual gospel tools that you want to use, there are a lot. Romans Road, there's a bunch of them, and they're in the resources that we give you. And they're all good. But the one thing that I think is philosophically, if you will, the most important is actually the overall structure of a gospel appointment, and that is the method we talk about, which is their story, your story, God's story. How many of you have heard that before? Okay, if you've been around a little bit. If you've not, get used to it. Because I think this is actually, like I said, there's a lot of tools that we could use, but this is the one that I think is the most, fundamentally important. Because here's the truth. People like to talk about themselves, right? Whether you're an introvert or extrovert, people like to talk about themselves. If you go into a conversation with someone and you just start beating them down with the truth of the gospel, you've not built any relationship with them, you've not spent any time to hear their story, you've not heard any, you've not shared anything personal with them, you're just going to be a car salesman. You're just trying to sell, and that's not what gospel appointments are. So we use this method of their story, my story, if you're making it personal, or your story. So their story, your story, God's story. And so what is that? That's literally, so when I sit down to have a gospel appointment with someone, I literally will spend most of my time, if necessary, talking about them. I ask them about their major, their parents, their worldview, did they go to church growing up? Do they have a job? What do they like to do for hobbies? Like, now I might not ask all those questions, but one of those questions and here's the thing, I'm going to be genuinely interested. I want to know who am I talking to. Because the reality is, if I know who I'm talking to, if I know a little about them, if I've gotten to know their kind of what makes them up a little bit, if I know they're a gamer, if they're this, if they're that, if they're into sports, if they're into politics, if they're an engineer, if they're an art student, if their parents are divorced, if their parents are still madly in love and talk about things they don't want to talk about, whatever, that was my parents. My parents loved to tell me, tangent, but my little parents loved to tell me how they were still having sex way into marriage. I was like, I don't want to hear it, but I'm glad you're in love. Okay, so, hey, that explains a lot about me, doesn't it? Anyways, okay, so, yeah, anyways, that was not on my script, by the way. So, my point is, now you know a little bit about me, so you can share the gospel in relevant nature, right? So the point is that when you ask people about themselves and they share personal things, their likes, their dislikes, their passions, you now, one, actually have a relationship, go figure, because you've gotten to learn something about each other, and you know a little bit about what makes them up, how they're wired, whether they have a good father or not. So then when you talk about the heavenly Father, there's reference to that, right? So it's about, and again, it's not just about getting the ends to the mean. It's actually about knowing them and actually loving them and understanding who they are. So at some point, you want to then transition the conversation to share a little about your story. And let me tell you, I don't care whether you have what you perceive as the most amazing, cool, action hero testimony you've ever heard, or whether you think you have the, quote, boring Christian testimony. If you are a sinner saved by the grace of God, your testimony is phenomenal. All right? And so what you do is, depending on where they're at in their story, you can share. So if they share that their parents are divorced and your parents are divorced, that's an opportunity to share part of your story, right? If they're really into something and you're into something, maybe they hate something that you equally hate, like raspberries. I have no idea. So, I have no idea where raspberries came from. But my point is, maybe there's something they dislike. But as you get to talk with them, you get to understand what makes them up, and then you can relate. You can, oh man, you know what? Yeah, I love the Suns. Like, woo, go Suns, or whatever. And so you find a way to share your story. Then, of course, hopefully, and this is something you can practice, you learn how to kind of tell your story, and your story should always lead into God's story. Right? So that if you're writing some notes, you figure out, you listen to their story a bunch, and you need to be genuinely interested. And then you transition, and you relate. You relate your story to what they're going through. And it's genuine. It's not forced. It's not, don't lie. Don't make up your story. Don't do that. But generally tell, hey, this is kind of my life. And maybe it relates. If it doesn't relate, then just jump right in and just tell who you are. Let them know a little about you. But the point is that somewhere, and this is the one thing I would practice if I was you, is learning how to make sure your testimony, your story, leads into God's story, right? Hey, I grew up in church, blah, 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 but I went, I walked away from God. Or, hey, you know what, this and that. I mean, my parents this, whatever, school, this, whatever. But at some point, I realized that I was putting my hope in a fallen, broken world that was not going to bring me the joy, and that I was far away from any sort of, God figure in my life. And so I just really started leaning back into God, and boom, 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 and then you get to the gospel. And then that's when you can share ABCs, the bridge, Romans Road, 3 circles, if that's something, or maybe you just know the gospel, which that's cool too. Maybe you just know the gospel and you are able to just articulate the gospel. And so that's when you deal. And then the big part of the gospel appointment that we do struggle with at times is we do want to get to a point where we actually ask them if they want to make a decision. Now, I'll be honest with you. This is the most awkward part of the gospel appointment, straight up. And I personally believe that discernment will tell you whether it's an appropriate time to do it. So this is where it gets a little weird, but what you need to understand is that the ultimate goal of the gospel conversation, of the gospel appointment, is actually to get them to turn their lives over to Jesus, right? That is the ultimate goal. It's not just to check some boxes and say, boom, I had the conversation, I've got my points for Jesus now, right? And let's be honest, it's easy to do that, right? It's easy to go do something for the kingdom, go do something for Jesus, and check our box and not really care about the outcome because we feel like we did what we're supposed to do. And that's fine to a certain degree, but the ultimate outcome is to help that person realize that there is nothing in this world that can give them the joy and the hope and the love that Jesus can. And we want them to see that in us, and we want them to be encouraged to make a decision to surrender their life to Jesus. Now, there is going to be discernment on whether you feel like your gospel appointment has led to a point where you can ask that question. And and here's the thing. You can have multiple gospel appointments with the same individual. Like it's a one and done and then you're out. Like I've heard of stories where someone, in fact, we just had a story at Chandler Gilbert where he had multiple, completely 100% online, just gospel appointment after gospel appointment, sharing stories, and multiple, I don't know how many was it? 3? On the third one, the guy decided he wanted to surrender his life to Christ. Amen? So that's awesome. So what I'm saying is, it's good. Okay. So that's my 21 minutes. What I want you to get, and like I said, I could sit up here for the next hour and give you all the ins and outs and the nitty-gritty of how to say this and how to say this. And the reality is you've got to kind of figure out your own style, your own thing, who you're going to meet with. You've got to start thinking about who can I set up gospel appointments with. Your campus will give you different opportunities to do that. Sometimes it'll be you meet someone at tabling. Sometimes it'll be you meet someone at class. Sometimes it's meet someone at work. Sometimes it's a friend of a friend. Sometimes it's a family member. There's all these different relationships we have. But what you're doing is you're looking for opportunities to say, hey, fill in the blank, so-and-so, hey, you want to go grab coffee sometime and talk about spiritual things? Or hey, and hopefully you have gotten to know this person enough that they know you're a Christian, and you can just say, hey, you know what? God is something that's really important to me. Would you be interested in maybe grabbing coffee on Wednesday and just talking about it? Here's what's crazy. Once someone has been willing to talk to me, I don't believe I've ever had someone not want to talk more over coffee, especially if I'm buying, okay? So there's a little secret, little insider tip. You pay, okay? So I know you're struggling college students, but you can afford a cup of coffee, all right? So what I'm saying is you say, hey, I would love to buy you coffee and just kind of tell you a little about, this, what I believe. And most people are willing, I think, to sit down, especially if you've already had a little bit of a relationship building with them, sit down and have that conversation with you, all right? So what are we going to do? I want you guys to see this firsthand. And so what we've decided to do, like I said, is we're going to bring up some actors, and then I'm actually going to ask for volunteers. And I'm going to have you come up. You're each going to have a mic, and you're going to proceed through a gospel appointment. Now, here's the kick. I'm going to be right here, and I'm actually going to have the power to pause and rewind. And at some point, I may actually pause and ask you guys what's going on. And again, I hope it translates on camera. And so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and have Scott come up first. So Scott's going to come up first. Now, you guys are all about the claps. I know. You can take your mask off. All right, so now the fun part. I need one volunteer that is going to have a gospel appointment with Gary. Who wants to have a gospel appointment with Gary? Zach, why are you walking away, dude? All right. That's kind of a volunteering right there as far as I'm concerned. Anybody want to have a gospel? Adrian? Yeah, I'm going to let you do the next one. Because Scott's your boy. So that might be a little too easy for you. I don't want to make it too easy on you. Somebody who doesn't know Gary, come up and have a gospel appointment with it. I've got some of you that I'm calling on if you don't volunteer. I'm counting to 5, and then I'm voluntolding someone. Voluntelling? James! That's what I'm talking about. All right. All right. You can take your mask off. All right. Ad has the top on it. Okay. I think you got to turn on. I don't know how to turn on. There you go.
The green. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Cool.
So here's the deal. For the sake of time,
I don't think mine's working. Oh, there it is.
There
okay.
it is. All right. Here we
Good to
go.
meet
For
you,
the
Gary.
sake of time, we're going to set this up. This is basically scene, Act 1, right here. Okay. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to have Scott in about a minute or two. You said, what, minute 30 you need? Yeah, okay. 30 seconds. I'm just kidding. I need Scott. Scott is going to basically tell you who he is. But you need to understand that this has all come out in the last, 20, 30 minutes of you talking to him. So in this scene, if you will, Gary, I keep saying Scott, Gary is this guy. He's going to tell you. Go.
Hey, so my name is Gary. I'm recently graduated from college. I grew up in a Christian home. My mom was Pentecostal. My grandma was Baptist. My dad was Catholic. So I'm Christian. Grew up like that. I even went to Christian school for a year. Didn't work out, but I got into sports. I played a little bit of football. I actually played for the Steelers for a minute, but that didn't work out. They barely couldn't cut it. But, so I believe in God. I prayed at the football games and at practice and stuff like that. And I grew up, like I said, I'm Christian. But now I'm just really focused on my career and where I'm going in life. My connections through school and through football landed me an awesome job. I'm starting to make money. I see a future ahead of me. So I really focused on that right now. I met this smoking hot blonde girl, blonde hair, blue eyes. I think she might be the one. I don't know. So I got all my energy right now into her and into work, and I'm trying to make a future so that I can have a family and do that sort of thing. And I'm really digging being successful at work. There's some promotions coming my way, and I'm putting in a lot of hours. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I think church is cool and all. I think God's cool. There's God, of course. I think maybe if I have kids, I'll probably want my kids to go to church and learn some ethics and say things like that. But right now, I'm cool, so I don't really need to be going to church. I don't need to be dealing with that right now. I just got bigger things on my plate. So that's where I'm at.
Cool. All right. So pause scene. All right. So did you get a vibe? Get an idea?
Yeah.
Did you guys get an idea of who he is? All right. Christian guy, grown up, just doesn't really have time for God right now, right? So as you're processing, because again, what's his ultimate goal right now?
To share the gospel.
To share the gospel,
Yeah.
right? Now, is he just going to beat him over the head with it?
No.
No, because it's about relationship. And so what you need to do is transition into a time where you share your story, trying to relate it to his story, and basically then leading into the gospel. And then what you need to figure out is what's going on in this guy's heart? Because here's the thing. Here's what all of you need to understand. Every single person you talk to needs Jesus. I need you to hear that again. They may not think they need Jesus. They may not know they need Jesus. They may think they have Jesus, but it may be the wrong Jesus, right? Okay? But every single person you talk to needs Jesus. They may not admit it, but they need it. And so you're trying to relationally relate. That was a double there. You're trying to relate to Gary here and figure out how you can walk through your story into how what God's done in your life and help him understand why he would need God in his life. Okay. You cool?
Yep.
All right. Everybody on page with us? All right. Roll scene.
So, Gary, you played for the Steelers, you said.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
for a minute. I thought I was going to have a career, but it didn't work out.
It's definitely
Yeah.
role playing.
I actually played football my whole life growing up, and athletics was such a big formative thing for me growing up. I mean, just having the community, I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, the team environment
Yeah.
and coming together with my people and kind of working hard and achieving goals. And that's what kind of led me into the business world. And just, I got a lot of goals. I got plans.
Yeah.
And, like, that's what I'm focused on.
That's awesome to be driven and like have a purpose and wanting to achieve things. And it sounds like you have this relationship with this girl and hope that works out. Yeah. So when you played football, were there ever like hard circumstances and like how did you cope with those? I mean, I definitely deal with like injuries like all throughout high school.
Yeah, that was kind of my problem. I was a sinner, so I was a little bit heavier, and my knees and stuff just started giving out. So, it wasn't a good plan for me. But yeah, I mean, I just dealt with it like anybody would. You take some medicine and do what you got to do to kind of push yourself through it. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. I actually had a few knee surgeries throughout high school and was able to go play in college for a year and just really got wrapped up in that and then stopped playing. And I'm sure you can probably relate to this, is you felt really maybe empty in a sense where you didn't really know the next step, or you didn't really know, you'd been this athlete your whole life and you kind of like were looking for other things. And it sounds like you've kind of been doing this with like business. Would you say you're kind of feeling like you don't really know exactly where you want to go, but you want to be this great businessman, or you want to be this, do you have kind of like an idea of who you want to be, but you don't feel like that's who you are?
Yeah, I mean, definitely it was a disappointing, like I kind of knew I wasn't going to be like the all-star athlete, right?
Yeah.
But you hope, right?
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
dreams and-
You wouldn't play if you didn't.
Yeah, and it kind of lets you down a little bit. So yeah, you hope you make some good NFL money, and you're not just stuck on the bench or anything like that. So I mean, that was disappointing. You're probably right. I'm probably like feeling a little bit of that hole or that gap by, putting myself into business. But I like being successful. I like achieving goals. I like getting stuff done, and I like to be driven. So that keeps me motivated and keeps me going.
Yeah, that actually kind of reminds me of like a Bible verse that I really keep deep in my heart, like Colossians 3:23, and it's like to work hard for God, not for man. And I think like that's something that really is a noble thing. I mean, God doesn't call us not to work, but and you said you have a relationship with God. What does that kind of look like now? You kind of mentioned your mom and dad grew up in the faith,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a relationship. Like,
Okay.
he's not hanging out with me or nothing like that.
Yeah, does that make like when you think of relationship, do you associate with God or?
I mean, I guess I don't quite understand that. I mean, I'm a Christian. I mean, I grew up Christian. Like, we're in America. I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
Like, that's just how it is. But, and like I said, I believe in God. Like, stuff didn't just materialize. I don't believe that. But I mean, I can't see him. I can't touch him. Relationship.
totally, yeah.
Like I got a relationship with people, with my girlfriend, with people I know. But
Yeah, that kind
Hey,
of go
pause.
back.
Good job. They're doing good, right? They're doing good. All right. So, again, to camera, hopefully you can get this. I'll try to relay this, but pause real quick, and you're doing great, by the way. Okay? What do you think is the biggest hurdle? I'm going to fall. What do you think is the biggest hurdle in this conversation right now? What's the biggest thing they need to get past? What was that in the back? Oh, you're supporting it. They're thumbing you up.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
What do you think is the biggest hurdle that James is facing in this dialogue? You had your hand raised. Gary.
Greg. That's the CTE from football right there.
Okay. Yeah. Too many head injuries.
I think Gary is in a good place in life.
Okay.
He just feels like he's in a good place with God, but in reality, he doesn't understand that he's not in the place he needs to be.
Okay.
And so James needs to try to make him understand that he needs to be more right with God.
Okay. So for camera, so basically what Ryan, thank you, has said over here is that Gary, Scott's character, is in a good place. And James needs to kind of maybe lead him to a point where he realizes that maybe he's not as good as he thinks he is. Now, again, hear this. This gets... There's a fine line here. We're not trying to, like, manipulate people, right? We're not trying to, like, bait and switch people into... We're trying to help people realize that the things that they're invested in their lives do not give what Jesus gives. So something that you have to understand in your heart before you ever have a gospel appointment is that the Jesus that you know, that loves you, and that you have salvation is, everyone needs it. Whether they realize it or not, they need Jesus. And you're going to meet a whole lot of people who don't think they need Jesus, or in Gary, that he has Jesus. He doesn't know what having Jesus really looks like. And so you're doing great, but I wanted them to kind of interact. Anybody else got one more thought that I can relay to camera that's like something, hey, I really think this would be an important thing to talk to Gary about? Anybody over here? Sylvia? Okay, good. So camera, so Sylvia said over on the left, she said, making sure he relays what a real relationship and surrendering of life to Jesus is, what real salvation is, versus the Christian American thing, right? Okay, so go.
So Gary, you said kind of growing up in the faith, right? I would say that's a similar story for me until I got to school, until I got to college, when football wasn't there for me to fall back onto. And I had this idea, like, okay, I'm a moral person. You know, in relation to everybody else, I'm pretty good. You know, I don't do a lot of terrible things. I drink every other weekend. You know, I go out with my friends. You know, I talk to girls. You know, maybe I want to like kind of see what they're up to like after the party. But you know, I'm not doing anything terrible. But then I really started to read the Bible and really get an understanding for who God is. God is not just a genie where I get to kind of, when things are going hard, I can go to him and say, you know, God, help me get an A on my exam. Or like, I didn't study this whole last week. Can you bail me out? Like, that's not how God works. God calls us to love him with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And that really is a hard thing to live up to. And would you say that you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength?
I mean, I know there's a God. I don't not love him, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's kind of a deep statement there.
Yeah.
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
And like, you know, I remember some Bible stuff. I don't remember it all. I get it mixed up. But, you know, I'm kind of like, God helps them who helps themselves kind of thought. You know, I just want to like take care of myself, right?
Yeah.
And you know, so I don't know where to go with that.
Yeah.
So I think I'm a good person too. Like I try to do good things. You know, I try to help people.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Don't steal. Don't
I'm
don't
not
lie.
like,
Yeah.
You know, I might have stole a couple times, but that was in my past. You know, but you know, stuff happens. But yeah, I think I'm a good person generally.
Yeah. Well, I think in relation to other people, yeah, we all think we don't want to think we're the worst person ever, but God's standards is up here, and we think we're like right below that, but we're really not that high. God and the Apostle Paul wrote in Romans as a letter that he wrote to a church in Rome. He said, "No one is good, no one is righteous, no one seeks after God." So that means if we look at ourselves, we may think we have an idea like, oh, we love God, but often it's an idea of God that we formulated in our mind to suit ourselves. And really, looking at my life before I encountered Christ, it was a God that really was, it had God on the label, but it was me. It was a God that suited my needs, suited my desires. That was football. That was approval of people. And still to this day, I'm not perfect. But I know, like, Christ, when he died on the cross, I mean, that's why we have this whole religion, is because a man named Jesus Christ, it's not his last name. Christ is not his last name.
Are you sure about that?
Sounds like his last name.
No, that's not his last name. But Jesus, a man, went to the cross, and he died a terrible, terrible death. I'm trying to think of the word, but I can't. Never. A terrible, painful death. Why would someone go through this? Not because he died for people who are good, you know, but he died for people who are bad, people who rejected him. And that's because he shows his great love for those type of people.
Yeah, but so something you were saying earlier, kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, I was letting you go, but you said like his standards up here and like we're down here. Like that's the thing. Like nobody can be perfect like God. So like his standard is too high. Like I can't. You know, like why even try to attain that? Just I got to be as good as I can. Hopefully, I'll do enough good stuff, kind of offset, and then, you know, I don't know. It just seems like it's too hard. So that's kind of like why I left the church a little bit. Like when I was going, it seems a little bit like hypocrisy. Like we're supposed to be perfect, and I can't be perfect.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be good.
Yeah, I mean, and I think no Christian is going to ever be perfect, and I think that's a hard thing for us to swallow because we want to serve God, we want to love God with everything that we have, but often that's tainted. We want something from Him. We want the gifts of God, not just God. I think when we come to God, we expect we want the healing or we want the peace, but really we get God in the gospel. And the gospel means good news. And the good news is that God gave Himself for sinful people. And kind of touching back on your point for the business, like the businessman, maybe this is like a food for thought as we kind of go our own way for you to think about. Like Jesus talks about he's talking to a rich young ruler or rich young man, and kind of someone in your position. He's got everything going for him. This guy's, and he comes to Jesus and he says, teacher, what do I have to do to inherit the kingdom? And he's like, go do these things. And
Yeah, I heard that. I remember then he wanted them sell all the stuff. So
Yeah.
do I got to sell all my stuff?
Yeah, and I think what Jesus was trying to get across to that young man is his idolatry for his money. Okay. And idolatry simply is, it sounds like this very ancient word, but idolatry is really anything that we put on a pedestal other than God. And God is the highest good. And we often think if we have God, it's just going to be boring. It's going to be, I'm going to have to go to church on Sundays.
Yeah, that's what I think sometimes.
It's not going to be a fun life. I can't do anything fun. All the fun stuff, it doesn't have God involved with it. But really, when we have God, we have the peace and the assurance of knowing that we have a relationship and we have a right standing with the thing we were made for. God, we were made for God.
So you keep saying if you have God and we have a relationship, that's still confusing to me because how do you have a relationship? That sounds cool and all, but I don't get how I get to have that.
Yeah.
If I got to have a relationship with God, that sounds cool, but I don't know that. I haven't seen that, I've just seen having to be perfect and good, and I can't do that.
Yeah, if we read our Bibles, and I'm guilty of that too, not being in the Word, but if we read our Bibles, the law, we think the Old Testament law was not given necessarily for us to follow to be right with God, but it was really given to be a mirror to reflect our sinfulness. That guy.
So it's like a bait and switch. Hey, do this. You can't.
Help.
Help? Okay. All right, so pause. That's a good place to pause. All right, so something that James, and I appreciate you volunteering. You're doing a good job. And normally you would have a lot more time, right? So you're a little bit under the wire, so we understand that. One of the things that I think is going on here is you're actually digging a little deep into theology, and you've now gone away from the relationship. You've gone away from just kind of the simplicity of what he's put his time in. And so I think there's definitely going to be a time, if he wants to continue to have this conversation. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hear you, but that makes sense. 'Cause you're right next to me.
Yes, okay. I just want to make sure the camera can hear me. So basically what I'm saying is if you start diving into theology, and this is the first gospel conversation, you may have lost him. Right? And so what you're trying to do in this gospel appointment is actually relate and get him to kind of almost open up and see in your life, hey, because this is your story, and I know a little bit about you enough to know that there was a point in time where you were putting your hope and your joy and all that into football and other things, right? I'm pretty sure, right? Okay. So it's relating that. This is a relationship. Yeah. Don't just Bible him completely. Now, do not quote me of saying that you don't Bible, okay? That's not what I'm saying. The Bible is profound and huge and important. And at some point, there needs to be theology. But this is not a theology lesson. This is, Gary, you're putting your hope and joy in something that's not going to fulfill you, bro. Okay? So what time do we have?
3:13.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
Okay.
Okay?
He's doing great.
He's doing
You guys
great.
think he's doing good?
He's doing awesome.
I'm
You're doing really
impressed.
good.
I'm impressed.
Yeah, you're doing really good. So we're gonna rewind the clock a little bit, okay? What I want you to do is I just want you to maybe kind of really poignantly just say, hey man, the stuff you're putting your time and all that, is it really bring you joy? What do you think? What do you think about eternally? What do you think is going to happen to you when you you could bring those questions up, right? Give him something to think about relate it back to your life if you want. Hey, man, let me tell you, I was there, man. I used to put, and I realized I came to a really hollow place where I realized that all the success wasn't bringing me near the joy I thought it would. You want to create a sense of he needs Jesus. And again, he's not trying to trick him. He's just trying to get him to think, maybe I need Jesus. Now, so go.
Okay. So Gary,
Yeah.
I'm going to say this kind of last thing as we go. Jesus talks about like talking to this rich young ruler, and he says he kind of walks away and he says, "What does it profit a man to gain the whole world yet to forfeit his soul?" And that kind of leads into my last question: is like, what do you think happens to us when we die?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a heaven, and so I'm hoping that that's where I end up.
You're hoping?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I don't know that anybody really knows. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to go to hell. I believe that that's there. I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, you can know if you're going to go to heaven or not. You can know by putting on Christ, and the Bible talks about like when we believe in Christ, when we trust in Him, we forsake everything else and put Him on, and we put on His righteousness that He died for us. And so, what does it profit to gain all these things that you have in place? And those are good things. They're not bad things.
yeah.
Having a job, having a marriage, having a family, they're not bad things. But when we elevate them to the highest thing, like I elevated athletics, when I elevated social status, when I lost those things, I was empty. And I think
Well, I felt a little bit of that when, I was like
All right.
glazing over it a little.
Pause. So we're out of time.
Okay.
So first of all, he did awesome, right? He did awesome. So normally you'd have a lot more time. You'd have a lot more time and be a lot more. So again, let's go ahead and get Kirsty up next. So you guys have a seat. Again, give him applause. That was hard. He did a great job. All right. Also, I think Scott did a great job. Okay. All right. So while Kirsty gets up here, again, what I want to encourage you to do, this is not going to be perfect, right? Role playing is rarely perfect, okay? But what I'm trying to get you guys to see is that it's so much about connecting with the person and trying to help them see what you see. So the reality is, if you're a believer in Jesus, the scales have been taken off your eyes, right? You have experienced Jesus and you've experienced the Lord in a way that the person you're talking to, if they're not a believer, they've never uncovered, they've never experienced. And so you're trying to help them through their story, your story, and then the gospel, trying to help them understand that they need Jesus, because everyone needs Jesus. But it's gonna be different for every person you're talking to, right? Because everybody's gonna come from this different worldview. So, in that note, we have Catherine. Okay, you didn't do the name tag like Gary over there. That's okay, because the name tag didn't work. You forgot his name. So I need another volunteer. I think I'm gonna go female on this one. So I need a female volunteer. Come on, don't make me tell one of you to do it. I need a female volunteer. Female volunteer. I know who I'm going to pick come on, female volunteer, going once, going twice. Up here on this table, you look like you want to do it. You look like you want to do it. Come on. All right, come on up. Yeah. The eye contact did it. All right. All right. You good? You good? Okay, take the mask off. You guys can take your mask. If you're okay taking the mask off. All right. So, same thing as last time. I'm going to explain who she is, and you need to understand that this has all transpired in the last 20, 30 minutes of her talking to you. All right? You're good. All right. Okay. Oh, and by the way, yeah, turn the mic on. We had James and Scott, and this is, hold it down here. There you go.
Gotcha.
There you
Hi,
go.
I'm Claire.
This is Claire. All right. And she's with
Well, my character is Catherine.
Catherine. All right. Go for it.
Yeah. So my name is Catherine. I'm a freshman. I'm studying art, and I'm also considering minoring in religious studies. And basically, my parents weren't religious, but my grandma was Catholic, and so she would often bring me to Mass with her when I was a kid. And I really like and respect Jesus. I like that he taught a lot about love and forgiveness, and he was, countercultural to the time, calling out the hypocrites. But as I've gotten older and I studied more about other religions, I really think that there's a bit of truth in all of them. I think that sometimes the exclusivity of one religion kind of holds us back and creates conflict that doesn't necessarily need to be there, because I think God's kind of all present and in everything. And I think all religions are true, and there's beautiful aspects in each, and I think we'd probably get along more if we understood we have more in common than different. So,
All right, so what's her biggest hurdle? Universalism. All paths lead to the same end, right? You get that? Okay. Did I miss something?
She's just nervous, and that's
Oh, okay. I was like, I
Little
turned
bit.
away and started laughing. I'm like, well,
It
okay.
is A-okay.
All right.
That's super cool that you have learned a lot about different religions. What got you into doing a religion minor?
Yeah, so basically, where I grew up, well, some of my friends, like I said, I was exposed to Catholicism, and I had other friends who were Buddhist and friends who were Mormon, and I realized like they were all being good people, and I do believe that religion brings a lot of really good aspects, and so I realized how much we had in common, and there was just kind of this curiosity of like how different people live their lives and culture and stuff, and so I just really grew an appreciation for it. So
That's super interesting. So would you say that how you view religion is sort of like a tool to help us in our lives on earth, or do you think that there are aspects that extend beyond our lifetime?
Okay, pause. So, first of all, she is doing something really, really, really good. Really good. What is she doing really good? Asking questions. Absolutely. One of the best ways to have a conversation with someone is to ask genuine questions. Killed it. All right, keep going.
I think there's an element of both. Like, I definitely agree that it helps us here. And I believe there is probably an afterlife. And to what that extent that looks like, I'm not entirely sure yet. But at least I can definitely say, like, we all know we're here now. I definitely think there's an aspect about bettering society here. So,
Yeah, I love the way that I've seen my religious experience personally impact how I live and how the people that are in my religion live. I'm actually a Christian. I grew up Protestant. I actually attended the same church from when I was 6 months old until I moved here for college. So I am heavily churched, I guess you could say. When I was growing up in the church, there was a heavy emphasis on service. So starting in 5th grade is when I started going on mission trips. I went to quite a few places and got to meet a lot of people with different worldviews. I think some really interesting ones would be like in Uganda, I met a lot of people who just view the world really differently than I do. And I mean, part of that, like your religion's minor, I'm sure you're meeting a lot of people that view the world differently. That's really cool. And then in human event class, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but there's a course at my school that's mandatory for a sector of the students, and we have to learn about like different worldviews through different texts, and it's been really cool. Yeah. But I think for my personal worldview, I would definitely fall along the traditional Christian worldview. What are your thoughts on that?
in what aspect do you mean?
Like, what are your general vibes for Christianity? Because I know you said your grandmother was Catholic, right? And she would take you to Mass. I actually have a Catholic roommate right now, so I've been talking to her a bit about Catholicism. What did that look like in your life?
So, at least for me, I really loved the energy and the emotion and stuff behind it. I don't know if I believe everything that's exactly in the Bible. I believe in a lot of the teachings and at least the general rules behind them. But I guess I'd say part of my issue is also, like I said, I believe with a lot of other religions, if we could see more our commonalities and maybe not some of the aspects that are excluding people, I think that's where a lot of my issues come from. And so if we help each other kind of see how much more we have in common, how much we should really be able to love each other and serve. Like, I love that you said how much the service happened and you got to see people from different beliefs, but that's kind of where I'm at, so.
That is really interesting. So, sorry, brief thinking moment.
Okay.
Okay, so pause there. So something to realize, as I walk up texting, something to realize is if you have conversation with someone, you don't have to always be ready to answer. You don't have to always be ready. You're not, it's not a sales pitch. It's not a lecture, right? It's not a teaching per se, right? It's a conversation. And there are tons of times in conversation that you pause and you go, let me think about that. That's interesting. I never thought of. So it's okay to pause. It's okay. It's also, if you ask a question and they don't have an immediate answer, it's okay to let them pause and let them think about it. That might actually be the best thing to do because they're actually starting to think about their own worldview. Okay? So you're doing great. Keep it up.
Thanks. I don't know, but I do have a question. So you're talking about exclusivity in beliefs. How have you seen that in your own life? Or has that caused any hurt for you?
I mean, to some degree it has. It's been hard when, I've seen friends where they believe something different and they're really trying to be the best people they can be. And I know, like, with Christians, it's like, oh, well, if you don't believe exactly what we believe, then you're going to hell. And this person's also just trying to do the best they can, and they're trying to seek God. And it's like, well, if, they got God's name wrong, they're going to hell. Like that, I struggle with that.
Yeah, I can see how that really is a really difficult struggle because there are a lot of people that have not heard about Christianity, which is part of the reason that I feel really personally compelled to go and tell people about it, because since I do hold those Christian beliefs, I want to share that with as many people as possible. And that's not because I think that I'm better than anybody, because from a Christian viewpoint, we believe that everyone has fallen short of God's intended plan for us. Because when he created people, he created us in his image. And when Adam and Eve disobeyed him in the garden, then that was when humanity was separated from God by our own choices. And there was quite a period of time where the only way to, talk to God or access him was through the priests in the temples, and they would have to go through sacrifices to atone for their sins. But that was only a temporary solution. So God's provision for humanity was to send his one and only son, Jesus, to earth. So he was born and he lived a perfect life because he was God, and he ended up dying on the cross for our sins as a man. And that act of him dying on the cross for us is basically he took our sins to the grave with him. And then 3 days later, he rose back to life. And in that, he defeated death. And so where that leaves us as Christians, or I guess me personally, is now I feel like every day it is my responsibility to share his love with other people. So when I'm talking to others, I try not to be exclusive of who I talk to, because I want to share that love to everybody regardless of their beliefs. And I definitely respect people who don't believe the same thing as me, but I feel like it would be unloving for me not to share that.
I appreciate that. Like, that's a little bit different than I feel like a lot of the same general things, but it's worded a little bit differently. And I appreciate, that you're open. I can tell, like, you're a really sweet person. So, but I guess, like, my question would be, like, with someone, like, obviously you don't hate them, like, if they don't believe what you believe. But I guess I'd just ask, like, why specifically would you say Christianity is right and, like, other religions would be wrong?
The reason I would say that is because I do believe in the God of the Bible. And when Jesus says in the Bible at one point, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. I think in that verse, he makes it very clear that he is the ultimate sacrifice for humanity, because God could have not sent his son, and he could have just allowed that gap to remain between people and him. But through Jesus, we now have an all-sufficient way to be with God. Because in that moment, God removed the separation from us and him. So now through Jesus, I believe that that's the only way that we can reach God, because if there was another way, he wouldn't need to have sent Jesus.
Gotcha.
Amen. Amen.
It's hard to think of a follow-up question right now.
So are you just ready to give your life to Jesus after that? Because that's, I mean,
I was tempted to come in here. Well, I don't think I'd be quite at that point. I'd still have more questions, but I'm feeling a lot more open of okay, I'm starting to grasp this and
Right.
definitely understanding. I don't know if I'm quite at the point where I'd say okay, I believe this, but I understand why your religion says that and why it's okay that it's exclusive. And I definitely feel an appreciation and understanding better of it.
It was a great answer.
Yeah, it was. That
So-
part of me's
So
oh, man, what do I
again,
say?
as we pause, I want you guys to realize, so we're trying to give you just a taste, right? We're just trying to give you a taste of what a gospel appointment can look like, especially for those of you who've never done one. And so you can see that it's very ebb and flow, right? It's very interpersonal, and it's going to be different. It's going to be different because you're different than Claire. It's going to be different because the person you're talking to is different than Catherine. Did I get that right? Okay. So your scenario is not going to be exactly like this, but you can see, and part of it is you being able to articulate what the gospel means to you. Why do you believe it, right? Claire's doing a phenomenal job of answering one of the hardest questions that's out there. Why do Christians think they're better than everybody else, right? Or why is it exclusive? Or why do people have to go to hell? I heard Scott say that earlier. Those are some of the harder questions we have to answer. So honestly, part of the equation is knowing why do you believe that Jesus is the way? Because if you believe Jesus is the way, then you've been able to formulate and articulate, as Claire has, what's been going on. So for the sake of time, what time is it? 31. All right, we got a little bit of time. So to move this along, someone tell me, and not that you're doing a great job, this is just so they can engage, right? Okay? So someone tell me what you might do in the situation. Where would you want to lead the conversation to get Catherine to be thinking about her worldview and maybe even cause her to want to seek Jesus, right? In the back.
You have to say why Christianity is different than all world religions.
Okay, so the answer in the table for online was you have to point out why is Christianity different from other religions, okay? Anybody else? Go ahead. Okay? So he said, push heavy into the fact that Jesus teaches us over and over to love others more than ourselves, right? Okay? What else? Adrian? Okay.
And I would ask them, with knowing that I shared that with you, would you be willing to think about that?
Yeah. So basically what Adrian is saying, again to those on camera, is make them think about eternity. Make them think about the afterlife. You want to be careful. You don't want to come across that you're beating them down with hell, right? But on the same note, we need to think, people need to think about what happens after their death, right? If you're to die tomorrow, what happens to you? I think that is one of the biggest questions that every human has. And to get someone talking about the afterlife and what that looks like, and that's important. So, so you good? Want to keep going?
I'll try and hit all that.
You're killing it. You're killing it. All right, go for it.
I think one thing that makes Christianity really different from other religions is its emphasis on the fact that humans are not the ones that become good enough for salvation. Like you said, you believe in some sort of afterlife, maybe. For Christians, it's, I guess you could say, either eternity with God or apart from God. And we don't get to a place where we know we're going to have eternity with God because we've done enough good actions. Because I know, for me personally, I can try so hard to live my life perfectly, and I just keep messing up, whether it's snapping at somebody because I get irritated or just falling short of what I've agreed to. It's really exhausting. And what I've found from my conversations with people that have different belief systems is that their religions require them to be better and to be good. And that is what gets them salvation or eternity in the good place. So where Christianity differs is through Jesus, through his sacrifice. If we admit that we're sinners and we believe that he died on the cross for our sins and rose again, and we confess God as our Lord and Savior, then that grace, like our faith through God's grace, is what allows us to be saved. And through that, I make sure that I am trying to live my life in loving other people like Christ loved people here on earth. Because I know that it's not me that's getting me to heaven, it's just Jesus, and Jesus died for me and loves me so much that I feel compelled to share that love with other people, because that was his central message, was to share that good news and love with others. And so, if you don't mind me asking, if you were to die today, where do you think you would be?
All right, pause. We are out of time. We're over time, actually, and so we're going to keep moving. First of all, another huge round of applause. Huge round of applause. Claire did awesome. Good job. So you are going to reach. There's going to be a lot of Garys on your campus that are seeking just success and popularity and all that. You are going to talk to a lot of Catherines that just think all roads lead to the same basic spiritual religious place, right? All gods are the same. And so I think this is a huge understanding that Christianity is different. You guys can go ahead and sit down. Thank you. I'm sure Catherine's answer was going to be profound, but we're short on time. So we're going to ask Eric Dressler to come up next. And so we'll have him introduce himself in a second. But something really quick hit tip that I use a lot when I'm on campus, particularly with the all roads lead to the same place, is this idea that Christianity is different. I think in one super profound way, and that is Christianity. What we believe in Jesus is the only religion, the only world religion that has ever existed and exists today where we don't earn some sort of place in eternity, right? Like every other religion, no matter what it is, you earn karma, afterlife, 40 virgins, whatever it is, but you earn it. And Christianity is the only religion where we don't earn it. It's not on us. And here's what's crazy. If I'm going to make a religion, I'm going to make a religion that I can control. But if Christianity, I'm not in control. And that is a profound thing to make people think about, okay? So we're short on time. So this one's going to be potentially the hardest. So Adrian, come on up because you've been raising your hand this whole time, okay? All right. Same thing as before. They've already been talking. It's 50 minutes, and this is what Adrian has learned.
It doesn't work. Oh, it does work.
Yeah.
There you go. It does.
You good? Good? No, just use his
I
real
don't
quick.
see the green button.
Here,
Bill
just
Green,
use his for a second.
light.
And go. I'll turn this on. Give me this. Okay.
Hey, Adrian. Nice to meet you. My name's Archie. Oh, thank you.
Does it work good? Yep.
Sweet. All right. So just brief history about me. Born in Colorado, moved out here later in life. My dad passed away when I was 5, so it was a little weird of a childhood, but my mom remarried. Stepdad was a nice guy. Never really was involved in our lives. But when I got later into school, I found out I really loved math and science. And really thought like I was going to become an engineer. So that's why I'm here at ASU studying software engineering.
Yeah.
Never really had any religious background. Went to church once or twice with my grandparents. Read a couple things about various religions on the internet. And just kind of came to the conclusion that religion's nice. It helps some people, but just kind of outdated. Science has really answered a lot of the issues that religion used to answer. And so just don't really see the point of God or really why there's any evidence for him in the first place. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, what kind of led you to that conclusion? Like, what was it?
All right, pause though. Pause. So what again, I'm not on camera, but what is it that is the big hurdle here? Science. That's one way to put it. Is science and religion, is science and faith in Jesus compatible? It's materialism in science over science of faith, right?
Someone
okay.
saw Richard.
So, all right. So
There you go.
you're also going to reach this a lot. Well, that's the hurdle. So keep going.
Can you ask your question again?
Oh yeah, I was saying so like what led you to that conclusion? Like they just
Yeah. So one of the things, especially as I study science, learn about things like evolution, Big
Yeah.
Bang Theory.
Yeah, I heard those.
And I hear things like in the Bible how the Earth's only like 5,000 years old or something like that.
Right.
And that's really weird. And also, since we have evolution, that shows we don't need someone to create us. Like we can just naturally occur.
Right.
If there's enough time. When we look at archaeology, we see like the dinosaurs and everything, and all the fossils being hundreds of thousands of years old, millions of years old in some cases.
Right.
And it's just kind of one of those, like, I don't really see how you could come to any sort of religion like that when we have those answers. I don't think religion's useless. I don't think it's bad.
Right.
I mean, a lot of hospitals were started by churches.
Right, yeah.
Universities were started by churches, but it's just one of those, like,
yeah.
it's a dated thing.
Yeah.
So.
Well, like what would you say like the biggest thing for you for like that's a big hurdle for you? Like that's that part of the Bible. It's not scientific. Would you say?
I mean, really just any miracle in the Bible.
Okay.
I just kind of look at it as oh yeah, something strange happened in the past and they couldn't really explain it, so they called
Right.
it a miracle. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't prove miracles. They're
Yeah.
by definition against science, and so
Right.
yeah.
Do you ever? Have you ever heard like? I mean, I'm sure you heard of miracles that happened before, like
Oh yeah.
not like back in the day, but like you just never know what happened. Like
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know how that happened, but it happened.
There's people all the time. I mean,
Right.
isn't there like some TV channel or something where like there's these preachers that ask for money or doing miracles all the time?
You know what? For me, I would just tell you right now, like I don't agree with those people. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think they're like, fakes and just
Yeah,
wanting money.
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of the way I look at it. Is there's a
Yeah.
lot of miracle claims, and
Right.
I'm sure there's an explanation for every single one of them.
Right.
They just
All right,
may
pause.
not have it yet.
Okay, pause. So here's the one thing I'm gonna get. We're short on time, so I'm gonna do this rapidly. But here's the thing: a lot of the times, someone who is non-religious. So this is a little different from the first two. The first two were totally willing to talk about God, acknowledge Him. They understood Him differently, right? Like the first guy just didn't think He really was that important, but he believed in Him, and whatever other things were more important. The second one thought that Jesus we believe in is just a path. This is the guy now that doesn't believe God exists, right? He's not antagonistic. However, someone that's more of this vein is going to almost exclusively continually try to put you on the defense of what you believe, which we need to be able to defend what we believe a little bit. But one of the important things in a dialogue like this is that we don't do a lot of the times, and I didn't do this for years until I started realizing it, is I would go talk to an atheist or talk to someone who believed, and I would constantly be the one on defense, and I would never make them think about their own worldview. And so one of the things you want to do in this conversation is, yeah, you want to agree with them. I think that's great. Be interested. But at some point, if possible, you want to say, where do you think the Big Bang came from, right? Where do you think we come from? Where do you think morality comes from? Like one of these questions that gets them to have to start talking about what they believe and defend what they believe, not just you always defending what you believe. Okay? Got it?
Okay. What were you again? I forgot. Sorry.
So you just asked some issues I had with the Bible, and I
Right.
said like miracles are the big one because you
Right.
you can't prove them.
Can't prove that. Right.
Yeah, especially when they're written in
Yeah.
what, like how old's the Bible again?
It's pretty old. I don't have a number, but I know it's dang old. I'll say that. But
Exactly.
dang
Like
old.
it's been so long. How do we know that they were even right to begin with?
Right. I mean, the first one I could even say. Like manuscripts, right? Because how manuscripts, people can change it, right? It's kind of the thing. Like,
Yeah.
it's always changed.
And it's been translated so many times too.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the argument. But here it is. Right? This is kind of a crazy thing. So, like for text to be reliable, you say like history, right? We believe on our history, but for a reason, because it's written down and there's so many of them. Well, out of all the historic, historic texts, the Bible wins all of them. It's crazy. Over 5,000 manuscripts that we have from its original. It's insane. There's so much reliability. Not only that, we have historical people from the first century who wrote about Jesus. you know, and they were atheists too. They didn't believe him, but they just saw, we saw the man do stuff. You know, they didn't agree that he was God, but they saw him die, and they saw him die on a cross, and that was it. You know, that's what they agreed on.
Wait, you said there's atheist people that didn't believe in God?
Dude, yeah, like, I mean,
Who?
so it's not very biased, you know, because the bias thing is like, well, you're a Christian, so therefore, you know, of course you'll hold to that. But there's some historians that have agreed to that. So like, I mean,
from the time that Jesus was like,
Yeah.
they saw it and they wrote about
yeah,
it?
the first century, yeah.
Who are those people? I never heard about that.
So there's a guy. Named
All right,
Jo-
pause. All right, we don't have time for the minutia. So
Okay.
that was good. Do you actually know the answer to that?
I do,
Okay,
yeah.
give the answer quickly.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a man named Josephus, and he wrote a huge text about that, about Jesus. But you know, I kind of want to go around too because I know you know you.
Okay, so pause. So Adrian's killing it. He's doing a great job. He's doing really good. Okay, we don't have time
Dang it.
for you. I feel like you and Eric could be up here for the next hour debating and talk 2 hours. Okay, when we have like 2 minutes. So so here's the thing. One of the things when we are having gospel appointments with someone who is from this worldview, you know, not a theist, doesn't necessarily believe there's a God, it is really easy to follow them and just spiral for hours around and around in circles on all the minutia of what you could and couldn't believe. And then there's also the possibility, it's highly likely, happens to me almost every time, that they ask a question that I don't know the answer to. I've not studied all the science, and I mean, I've tried as much as I can, but I've not studied everything they've studied. So they may bring something up scientific that I have no clue on. It is okay to not have all the answers when it comes to what they believe, for sure. And it's even okay if they pose a question that you can't answer. It's okay to say, you know what, that is a great question. Let's grab coffee again another time. I'll go look that up. Like, it's okay to not have the answers. It's okay to not get caught in this, like, constant spiral. Now, if you've got some good answers and you want to throw them down and it's a good conversation, I'm not saying don't do that, but just be careful you don't just get caught up. Because here's the thing. All of the intellectual apologetics that you do will not save them. Okay? Now, it may open their heart up. It may make them receptive to hearing some things, and that's great. And so if you've got that kind of skill, then roll with it. But the problem is, a lot of you on camera and here in person, you're thinking, I can't do it. Apologetics, it might feel like it's really out of your wheelhouse. Here's the thing. You don't have to know apologetics to share the love of Jesus with someone. And so the point here is not to get caught up in the minutia, but talk to him about where his hope is. Talk to him about where his joy is. Talk to him about what happens, you know, when he dies. Talk to him about what gives you fulfillment in what you believe. Like you could do that way. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, he may not give his life to Jesus, right? He probably has a lot of hurdles to get past. But what we're doing is we're planting seeds. We say that, but we're walking him through, and we're trying to create just enough doubt, just enough thought process so that he might leave and go, okay, maybe there is something I could look into on that, right? Okay, you've got like, if that, not really. I'm going to let you go anywhere.
All right, let's roll.
All right.
Well, all right, what were we talking about? Sorry.
We went from miracles to textual criticism, go back to miracles and start
Right.
there.
Okay. So yeah, I'll say because you say you're yeah. Okay. So you're saying you're atheist. So I'm assuming that you don't have a belief in God, right?
I just don't see any evidence
You
for
see
him.
God. Okay. Let me ask you this. Let me give you a quick. I think I convinced you in 15 seconds that there's a God.
I'd be impressed by that.
All right. So when you see a building, right? Do we just assume that the building just came there?
Usually not,
Why is that?
because it looks like something that doesn't naturally occur.
Would you say someone built that?
Most likely.
Right. So what about a painting? What about a painting? Would you say that the painting was there? Was there a painter who painted that painting?
Usually.
So for God, right? When we see creation and we see these other things, we know that there's a creator who made all these things. So puppies, dogs, humans, the world, universe, things have to be created. Things that are created has to have a creator to make that, right? So in knowing that too, if there is a God, would there be anything else that you think that would be displeasing to God for you not to go to like heaven or hell? If obviously from assumptions that you believe that, but
I'm sorry, you lost me. You're talking
Sorry,
about
so, yeah,
creator and
so-
creation. Now you're talking about
All right,
heaven
we
and
are out of
hell.
time.
Dang it.
I know.
I was leading it
I
up
know.
there.
I know.
Trevor.
You're doing good. No, I know. I got to cut you off, and I'm sorry. You guys can have a seat. Good job.
Can I
Good
make one quick point,
What?
Trevor?
Yeah, make a quick point.
So, two things, Adrian. Oh, Mike? Sweet.
Hello.
Okay. So, you did a good job asking me questions at the start, and then you let me take the seat, and I was running the conversation. I could send you
Right.
anywhere I want.
Yeah.
So, just keep asking questions like you were doing.
Right.
Don't major in the minors. Focus on what's important, not on every cool rabbit trail that you know.
Right.
I say this as someone who does it all the time, right, Trevor?
Yes.
So,
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Yeah, just leave them here. Okay, so we're over on time. I want to close on this, okay? Again, we can't give you every scenario up here. I wanted to give you a taste on what kind of a gospel appointment can look like. These were hard scenarios. What Adrian just faced, I think, is one of the hardest ones because there's a lot of intellectual hurdles for them to jump through. And they are going to constantly put you on the defensive. That's just kind of the way that conversation, and so it's always about trying to ask questions, not just get caught up in the minutia of all of their theories and all this kind of stuff. And there's a lot of things you can say, but here's again what I want you to understand more than anything. It isn't about having all the answers. It isn't about having the perfect pitch or the perfect line or the perfect whatever. It's you personally have come to a point where you have realized whatever your testimony is, whatever your journey has been, you have come to the point where you have realized that nothing else in this world is as amazing as Jesus. Nothing else in this world is as awesome or as joy-filled or as wonderful or as salvific as Jesus. And so the point of a gospel appointment is you can do apologetics, you can definitely ask them questions, all of those are important, but at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is share your heart. You're trying to say, hey, I just want to share with you what Jesus is to me, right? And so you just want to be careful that you don't just go in thinking that you're debating, because I think you can get yourself in trouble with that, but you're going in with this idea of, I just want to share what Jesus has done for me, right? I want to share the love of Jesus. And at the end of the day, all the answers aren't going to save people, but the love of Jesus is going to save them, okay? And so here's the thing. I'm going to double down on this again. This is the reason we think this is such an amazing tool in our belt, if you will, is because it is so intentional and it is so interpersonal. And so those two things make this such a great tool. And so you can have a gospel appointment. You can take someone to coffee or take someone's, to lunch or whatever and have these conversations in any situation and in any relationship and just have dialogue with them and really, again, get to that point where you're sharing what God has done for you, because it says, your testimony is part of God's story, right? It's part of God's testimony in you. And so utilize that, share, and if people see the excitement of God in you, it'll be something, whether they show it or not, the joy and the excitement of Jesus in you is going to be something that sends people thinking, man, they've got something that, if I'm honest, I want, right? Okay, so and then last thing is, we were just doing one-on-ones here. We often encourage people to do gospel appointments, with two people. So there's plenty of time. So Isabel and I have gone on a couple gospel appointments just because it was females, and I'm not going to go do gospel appointments with females. So I took Isabel, and we had a gospel appointment, and it was great. And so gospel appointments can be like 2-on-1, 2-on-2, all that kind of stuff. And if you want, I think sometimes going in pairs is actually even better, because both of you can then share your story and whatnot. So, okay, there's no way we can actually teach this in the time that we were given, but we tried. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to pray. Oh, I forgot something. Everyone has been saying it, but here's the deal. Pray. For the love, pray. Oh my gosh. So I know I didn't say it. We got straight into the nitty-gritty, which if you know me is probably my weakness. But man, we got to pray, because at the end of the day, again, all of our techniques, whether it's challenge communities or gospel appointments or even missions, if we're not praying, we're handicapping ourselves, right? And so we've got to be praying. So when we go do gospel appointments, I mean, the whole walking onto campus should be just one big, long, God, I can't do this without you. And so pray, and then pray some more, okay? So we're going to pray. and then I'll give you instructions. Lord, thank you for who you are. Thank you for this day that we can come even correspondently online with one another and listen to just reminders of who you are and your calling in our life. And God, help us to be intentional, Lord. Every one of us, especially if we call ourselves leaders, Lord, we are missionaries for your kingdom, God. And we are the vessels that you've chosen to use. And so please, God, use us. Give us the courage and the brave souls to go out and be intentional and be missional and share the gospel and share our testimonies with people. And God, if there's anyone that's still leery of that, God, just fill them with your spirit and help them have the confidence. Help them know that every single one of us is called to do this, and every single one of us can just have honest conversations with people. And God, help us also understand that more people need Jesus than admit it. And we have got this wonderful thing in you. Help us to be excited to share it. We pray all this in your name. Amen. All right, so going into the last part of this is the coup de grace. Thank you. I should not use words I don't know. All right. This is the end. So basically, we're going to go into campus time. And my understanding of campus time is literally a time to debrief. So you've heard 4 different speakers, if you will, throughout the day. But your missionaries, your campus missionaries know you, and you know each other better than anybody else in this room. And so we want you to get together. We want you to have a time to debrief. So if you're online, we love you. Have fun debriefing. If you're here, get with your campus leaders. And you guys can go outside, you can stay in here, whatever, and basically take time to debrief. And my understanding is once your campus has debriefed, you're good to go. So thank you for coming, and may God use you guys. Appreciate it. Okay?